DND number 6, The Worth of Souls, in Jesus' name. Chapter 15. Jeff stood in the doorway of the crowded room. Mickey lay on the small emergency room bed while nurses worked on her. She moaned a few times in her half-conscious state. Every time she did, Jeff's gut wrenched. Her face was battered and bloody. There were scratches on her arms and neck. He needed to hold her, needed it bad. "Excuse me," a deep voice said behind him. Jeff moved aside. The man moved into the room, turned, and looked Jeff over. "You need to wait outside," he said. Jeff finally gave the man his attention and read the name tag, Dr. Harrelson. He looked up into his eyes. "I'm waiting right here." "Do I need to call security?" Jeff began to chuckle. "Is something funny?" the doctor asked. "He's okay," another said behind Jeff. Jeff turned to see another doctor, and beside him, Jason Lee. Jason moved up beside Jeff, put his hand on his shoulder, while both doctors moved past to attend to Mickey. "How's she doing?" Jason asked. Jeff shrugged. "He beat her up pretty bad. There's a lot of facial swelling and bruising. I heard them say there might be some internal bleeding. She's in pain, I know that." He stopped and shook his head. "Do you realize how hard he'd have to hit her in order to cause internal bleeding?" Jason sighed. "The important thing to focus on is she's going to be okay." Jeff turned and looked at his boss. "She'll live, but will she be okay? I don't know." "She will with God's help. And yours, Jeff. Now would be a really good time to put your faith to work. Some prayers, some of that positive thinking. You gotta walk the walk." Jeff nodded. Mickey moaned, and both men turned their attention toward her. Dr. Harrelson was pushing on her abdomen. He looked up, consulted with the elder doctor, nodded his head before he continued his exam. A few minutes later, the elder doctor joined Jason and Jeff. The man extended his hand to Jeff. "I'm Dr. Meyer. I'm chief of staff here." Jeff shook his hand. "How is she?" "Well, she's obviously taken quite a beating, but I think it looks worse than it is. No major damage. We believe she has at least one broken rib. We're sending her for a full body scan and MRI to make sure there's nothing more than that. She's going to have some major bruising and swelling. Again, nothing critical. We'll keep her a few days, monitor her. Poor kid has been through enough, and we want to make sure she's okay before we release her." Jeff nodded. "Thank you." The doctor spoke briefly to Jason before he took his leave. Jeff watched as they covered Mickey and pushed her bed toward the door. He stepped aside. As she passed him, she opened her eyes and reached out. Jeff moved close and took her hand. "You're going to be okay, Mick." She closed her eyes, and he kissed her hand and gently placed it on her stomach. Stepping back, he watched as they wheeled her down the hall. Jason's cell phone began to vibrate. He pulled the phone from his pocket and glanced at the readout before he answered. "Special Agent Dodge, what can I do for you?" "Trying to reach Agent Davis. Kurt Wells finally talked. The arms deal is going down late tonight. Exchange of cash to take place in Nevada. I thought Jeff would like to be in on it." Jason eyed Jeff before he answered. "Well, I'm pretty sure Jeff would love to be in on the bus, but I'm afraid he's out of commission right now. You know, he just barely left the hospital earlier today, and now he's here with Mackenzie. I'm thinking he won't be much good to you in his present state of mind." "Yeah, that's what I thought. But I just wanted to give him the option. He deserved first dibs on the bust. I guess he's earned some well-deserved R&R. Give him and Ms. Daly our best." "Will do." "Excuse me, Agent Davis?" Both Jeff and Jason turned to one of the nurses who worked on Mickey. "Yes," Jeff answered. "When Ms. Daly gets done with the MRI, they're going to take her straight to her room. You're welcome to wait for her there. It's room 220. Jeff nodded. "Thank you." He turned back to Jason. "What bust am I not going to get in on?" "The cash exchange for the arms deal that's not going to happen." Jeff sighed. "I'm too tired to argue with you about it anyway." That right there should tell you that I made the right decision. New scene. Marissa sat on the sofa with her arms folded across her chest. Next to her sat a 4-year-old, pigtailed little girl who was mimicking Marissa's every move. On the floor in front of them, the girl's older brother had control of the remote and was at present scrolling through every channel of the 4 or 500 that was available on their current cable plan. She really didn't care what they watched. She just wished he'd stop at one channel and leave it there. They weren't bad kids as kids go. They were just kids. It was as 8-year-old Jimmy scrolled through the channels that Marissa got a quick glimpse of her father's face. Wait, she said quickly. What? Jimmy asked. Go back. To what? It was only news. Marissa glared. I said go back. Jimmy frowned. No, I don't want to watch the news. Marissa jumped up and grabbed the remote from him. I said go back, you little brat. Jimmy jumped up and went crying to his mother, and Marissa pointed the remote and scrolled back. What she saw took her breath away. Oh my gosh, she whispered as tears spilled over her cheeks. Jimmy's mom came in the room. Marissa, what's going on? Jimmy tells me... She stopped at the expression on Marissa's face. Her eyes went to the TV. They stood there watching until the end of the report. Marissa turned her face up to the woman, her tears still running freely. Please, I need to see my sister, please. The woman stood indecisively, wringing her hands. She's all I have left, Marissa whispered. Jimmy, Angie, go get your shoes on. We have to go bye-bye. New scene. Both her eyes were blackened and swollen shut. Her bottom lip was busted, her top lip swollen. Her right cheek was blue and yellow. Angry red scratches marred her neck and forearms. Jeff sat examining her as she slept. The anger for what Daly had done to her was eating him alive. He wanted to make the man suffer. In a way, Daly had hurt Mickey again and gotten away with it. No closure for Mickey. Jeff realized his thinking was skewed. The man had paid with his life. It was Jeff's need for revenge that was wreaking havoc with his equilibrium. Grandmaster Keno was always speaking about revenge being a poison to the mind and heart, and Jeff was beginning to understand. Mickey stirred and reached out in startled reflex, and Jeff took her hand. Hey, I'm here, Mickey. Can you hear me? Her eyelids moved, but she was unable to open them. Jeff, she said softly. Yes, baby, I'm here. Talman, he's dead? Yes. My mother shot him? Yes. Where is she? She's at her house. Alone? They called Dora. She's with her now. They? The FBI. Oh. How are you feeling? Sleepy. They have you on some pain meds. She remained silent for several minutes. She told me he had Marissa. Who? Your mother? She said Talman had Marissa and that he would hurt her if I didn't come right away. I see. Are you angry? Yep. At me? Yeah, at you, at Daly, at your mother, at the world. Can you forgive me? He squeezed her hand. Not yet. But that doesn't mean I don't love you, because I do. If I didn't, I wouldn't be angry. She sighed. I think I understand. I doubt it. You scared the crap out of me. I'm sorry. I thought I could handle it. Did you really think you could go over there and shoot the man? I don't know. I guess I thought I could use the gun to make him let Marissa go. Haven't you ever heard it said that you should never point a gun at anyone unless you intend to kill them? Yes, I've heard that. And? Well, I intended to kill him. I guess I wasn't thinking very clearly. Well, that's an understatement. You really are angry, aren't you? Anger, fear, very closely related. She reached up to touch his face. I wish I could see you. Well, when the swelling goes down, you'll be able to see. Jeff? I don't like it when you're mad. He chuckled. Good. Then don't make me mad ever again. Okay. Jeff? Yes. I love you. I love you too, Mick. The soft knock on the door ended their conversation, and Jeff's parents poked their heads in. Mom, Dad, come in, Jeff said. How's she doing? I'm okay, Mickey answered for him. I just can't open my eyes. Oh, you poor dear, Miss Davis crooned. She came closer, ushered Jeff out of the way, stroked Mickey's hair. Just look at what that man did to you. Don't you worry about a thing. You'll heal quickly, and I'll be here for you. I want you to know you can depend on me. I know Jeff is in love with you, and that's wonderful, but a girl, she needs women friends. Someone she can go to for camaraderie and understanding. I just want you to know that I'm here for you. Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Jeff stood back near his father, so proud that his mother was showering the woman he wanted with so much love. Please call me Jen. Everyone does. I brought you some things. You did? The woman smiled broadly. I went shopping. I mean, your house is gone, right? You're going to need some things to wear until you're able to get out and shop for yourself. I brought you a few outfits and some underwear and some shoes and some toiletries. You know, things you'll need. Thank you so much. I don't know what to say. Oh, Pooh, you don't have to thank me. Just concentrate on getting better. I will, I promise. Jen bent down and softly kissed Mickey's forehead. Things will get better, I promise. Mickey sniffed as the tears began to flow. Oh dear, have I upset you? No, it's just that a stranger is showing me more kindness and caring than I ever remember my own mother showing me. Stranger? Don't ever think of me as a stranger. Another knock had them all turning toward the door, and Marissa burst in, practically threw herself onto the bed. Mickey, oh, Mickey. New scene. Talman Daly was laid to rest with the minimum of flourish, even though he did have more people, press, and dignitaries there than the average funeral. Most were there to show support for his widow and daughters, even though the trio did not attend. After all, Marion Daly was the one who'd ended his life and was advised to stay home. Mickey was his intended victim, and Marissa stayed away out of the righteous indignation of the young. Talman had no other living relatives. Though Mickey and Marissa had both refused to attend the funeral, they received a great outpouring of love and support from former friends and colleagues of her stepfather, as well as the public. Some expressed guilt for somehow not seeing through his charade. Others wanted to share similar stories with her. Mickey and Marissa planned to spend the day of the funeral with their mother. Mickey had supposed that the woman might need to unburden herself, or might need comfort, or might need to know that she wasn't alone. However, that's not how it turned out. They arrived at the house at 9 in the morning. Marion Daly was just sitting down to breakfast. When she answered the door, she insisted on setting places for Mickey and Marissa, and then serving them much like she used to serve Talman. Mickey watched suspiciously as her mother performed these tasks. Once each place was perfect, Marion sat down. What she did next turned Mickey's stomach. She made a note of the time. Marissa also knew exactly what was happening and glanced at Mickey, her brow furrowed. Mom, Mickey said softly, you know, you don't have to do breakfast like this anymore. You don't have to sit in this room for an hour. You don't have to set formal places. You don't even have to eat breakfast at all if you don't want to. Her mother glared at her. I'll thank you to stop disrespecting your father on the very day he is being placed in the cold earth. Marissa gasped, momentarily stunned by her mother's words. Mickey wanted to retort, as she usually did, by stating firmly that Talman was not her father. Somehow, she held herself back. It was Marissa who found her voice. Mom, you do understand what he did. You do realize that he actually killed people. You do realize he killed your first husband, and he was going to kill your daughter. You must realize it because you were the one to pull the trigger. Marion turned quickly toward her younger daughter. And I'll not have you taking after your sister. I did what I had to do. She stopped and looked over at Mickey. But if not for Mackenzie's behavior, none of this would have happened. Just like your father said, she was always taunting him and pushing him. She knew just what she was doing. Though she spoke to her younger daughter, she kept her eyes on Mickey, eyebrows cocked. Mickey's eyes filled as she stared at the woman who was supposed to love her and protect her. She'd done neither for most of Mickey's life. It seemed her mother finally coming to her rescue was a fluke. Nothing had changed. Could it be that she was still ready and willing to pretend Talman could do no wrong? Probably her mother was simply confused. She'd been under so much stress. Mickey decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Mom, Mickey said softly, I think maybe you need some help. I think you're having trouble handling all the horrible things that have happened. I don't need your kind of help. Please, Mom, let me call someone for you. Let me help you. Oh, I think you've done enough, don't you? The tears spilled over Mickey's cheek. Her hand shook. You can't truly think that I had anything to do with what happened. He arranged to have me kidnapped. He arranged to have me murdered. He intended to rape me. Even when I was a child, Mom, I was a little girl and he hurt me. And Mom, he killed my father, your husband. And he was going to kill you. And you kept telling me my father left, that he didn't care about me. Talman hurt you too, Mom. Why can't you admit it? Her mother rose. If you hadn't come over here that day, none of this would have happened. If you hadn't been here, I wouldn't have had to do what I did. I guess that makes you feel great, huh? You got me to turn on Talman. You were the one who called me, remember? Mickey shrieked. Marissa reached for her sister's hand. It's okay, Mick. She's not in her right mind. I think we need to go. Marion frowned down at her. You're leaving with her? I don't want to stay here, Mom. Not here where, where everything happened. Come with us. We're going to stay in a hotel for a few days until we figure out what we're going to do. Please, Mom, come with us and we'll all start over again. Marion sat, placed her napkin in her lap, and lifted her fork. I have no desire to leave my home. This is my home. Mine. And no one is going to make me leave. No one. Do you hear? She yelled. Mickey stood. Let's go, Marissa. I don't think there's anything we can do here. She looked at her mother. I'll have Marissa's things packed and sent to us when we figure out where we're going to be. Marion swiped her hand in the air. Do whatever you want, Mackenzie. You always have. New scene. 2 days after the funeral, Marion Daly tried to end her own life. Her lifelong friend and protector, Dora Suarez, had come to check on her and found her unconscious next to an empty bottle of tranquilizers. By her side lay a note addressed to her husband, begging forgiveness for taking his life. She was resuscitated and transferred to a state mental hospital. A week later, Mackenzie Daly was awarded custody of Marissa and advised to attend regular counseling sessions with her. Mickey obtained power of attorney over her mother's estate. She contacted Dora and offered to pay restitution to her and her family. Dora refused, knowing Mickey had already paid many times over. Mickey, though, wouldn't take no for an answer, and in the end, Dora accepted trust funds set up for her grandchildren. Dora herself was offered a publishing contract to tell of her years with Talman Daly. Financially, she would be okay. Mentally was another story. Mickey's publisher was also anxiously awaiting her next book. On another note, planning stages of the reconstruction on Mickey's home in the suburb of Seattle had already begun. In the meantime, Mickey and Marissa were preparing to fly down to Los Angeles with Jeff. They would stay in his apartment until they left to visit his parents for the 4th of July. The goodbye between Cameron and his lifelong friend Marissa was a tearful one. He was appeased, however, when he learned that they were all invited to the Keno's home after the 4th for the remainder of July. New scene. Do I look okay? Mickey asked nervously, smoothing her hair. You look amazing, Mick, Jeff answered. Why do you think People magazine just listed you as one of the most beautiful people in the world? It wasn't the most beautiful, silly man, it was the most intriguing. Well, it should have been most beautiful. Mickey ignored him and turned toward the hall mirror in Jeff's small Los Angeles apartment. But the bruises. The makeup covered what's left of them. Really, hon, you can't tell. And who cares if you can? It's just an interview. Everyone knows what happened. Mickey blew out a breath and calmed herself and smiled back at the man she loved. Everyone doesn't know everything. I just hope I don't screw up and say something I didn't want to say. You'll do fine. Trust yourself, Mick. She nodded. How do you stay so calm? Like, when you're about to do something really hard or scary, like the night of the explosion, you just calmly shot that guy like it was nothing. He shook his head. Well, it's never like it was nothing. His lips pressed together tightly. This was a subject he didn't like to discuss. He blew out a breath and finally shrugged. I'm trained to stay calm under duress. I've been doing this a long time, so I stay calm and do what has to be done. Not liking the turn of the conversation, he smiled. Or have you ever heard the one about picturing the audience? Not liking the turn of the conversation, he smiled. Or have you ever heard the one about picturing the audience naked? Yeah, she answered, waiting for the punchline. Well, I just picture you naked. Frowning, she placed her hands on her hips. What? He asked innocently. It works for me. You are incorrigible. I was just playing around. She shook her head and sighed. Okay, now, Mick, you're starting to worry me. What's wrong? You're not just worried about this interview. What is it? Nothing, really. More second thoughts about our relationship? No, I don't think that's it. I mean, yes, I do have second thoughts all the time. Great. That's really great to hear. Sorry, I'm just being honest. Jeff sighed. I get the feeling that second thoughts about us is not what's bothering you right now. She nodded and eyed him. I'm not sure what the problem is. I feel a little lost, a little displaced, And if I'm feeling that way, how must Rissa be feeling? New town, soon to be a new school, new friends, no real home, and even suddenly, no parents. He moved close behind her, looking at her gorgeous reflection in the mirror. His hands rubbed up and down her arms. Rissa seems to be happy, but sometimes people cover well. But I know that Eric has spoken with her whenever she goes to see Jeffy. Look, Mick, I understand completely. You go from your happy little life in your own little house to being squished in my tiny apartment with almost nothing salvaged from your former life. And I imagine it's got to be hard being squished in here with me. She smiled. It's you being displaced, Jeff. Sleeping on the couch, giving up your bedroom for Rissa and I. So, what would the Kino say about how we're feeling? Well, first, let's make sure we get the answer to that question by giving Eric a call soon. He said you can call any time, right? She nodded. But for now, I can tell you what I think they would say. Okay. They would tell us to be grateful, to count our blessings. We sure have a lot to be grateful for, like you got away from your kidnappers, and then I found you, and Cameron decided to follow Jeffy, and remember we got out of your house in the nick of time, and thank God Marissa wasn't there. Mickey looked up, her mouth open. Oh, I hadn't thought about that one. I guess that judge changing his mind and CPS coming to get Marissa was a blessing. Exactly. Now you're talking. And now here we are, safe and sound, and really, Rissa doesn't... Well, I think I lost my connection. I'm going to try again, see how it goes. Exactly, now you're talking. And now here we are, safe and sound, and really, Rissa doesn't seem to be having a problem sleeping with me in your bed. I mean, at least when she's here and not spending the night with Jeffy. Are you having a problem sleeping in my bed? No, Jeff, that's not it. It's just that it's all happening so fast. I can't seem to get oriented before the next thing happens. What's the next thing? Who knows, she said sarcastically. She turned and circled his neck with her arms. I love sleeping in your bed. I love you, Jeff. I just need to take things slow. No problem. I'd prefer that much more than you doing something crazy without thinking it through. Me doing something crazy? Like what? Like stealing my gun and heading out to kill a man. She looked down. Oh, that. Pouting, she rubbed her hands over his chest. You still haven't forgiven me for that, have you? For heading over to shoot the senator while I'm laid up in the hospital? For stealing my gun? And worst of all, for putting your life on the line without a thought as to how Marissa and I could live without you? No, I haven't forgiven you. I should have trusted you. I know that. I wasn't thinking clearly. Please, Jeff, what will it take? He sighed and shook his head and pulled her close. His hands cupped her face as he looked deep into her eyes. I'd say it will take at least 50 years of marriage. She smacked his chest. Really, Jeff, I'm not kidding. Leaning forward, he nibbled on her cheek. Neither am I. Marry me, Mick. Surprised, she quickly looked up into his eyes. He certainly seemed serious enough. You're serious? I'm very, very serious. I love you, Mickey, with all my heart. I think you feel the same way. But what if, what if when things calm down we stop feeling this way? His jaw clenched and he nodded. Okay. Well, since you seem terrified that what we feel is all going to fade, we can have a long engagement. Let's say a year. If we still feel this way next June, we'll plan the wedding. Is that taking things slow enough for you? Looking up at his beautiful, strong, almost angelic face, she tried to think of life without him and couldn't bear it. Just say yes, he whispered. She smiled. Okay. Yes. But we wait a year. Yes? You mean it? She laughed. I said it, didn't I? He picked her up and twirled her around. Oh, Mick. He sighed when he put her down. Oh, baby, I love you so much. His head lowered and he kissed her, slowly, gently, thoroughly. It was the clearing of Marissa's throat that interrupted them. It's time, you guys. Let's go do this stupid thing. Mickey grinned at her sister. Jeff just asked me to marry him. Marissa clapped her hands together. Finally! I knew he was going to, I just didn't know when. You did? Yeah, he told me the secret the day the old hag came to put me in foster care. He was trying to take my mind off my troubles. Well, aren't you just so smart? Jeff laughed. Marissa shrugged. Child psychology. Easy stuff. And that is the end of chapter 15. All that's left is the epilogue.